Right now in Mortal Online 2, we are seeing something that is becoming harder and harder to ignore. Too many players are leaving the game. And in that context, it sounds especially strange to hear the developer respond with irritation, saying things like, "If you do not like it, go play World of Warcraft." But let us be honest, is that really what players want to hear from the person responsible for the future of the project? Is that really how a developer should speak when the game is already losing its audience? In my opinion, one of the main reasons for the player decline is not simply PvP itself, but unjustified PvP. In other words, plain PK, when you are killed not because of a conflict, not because of resources, not because of territory, not because of a personal feud, but simply because someone can do it. Simply because a group of red players saw an easy target and decided to entertain themselves. And here, it is important to say this right away. I am not arguing for the removal of red players. No. Red players are part of the spirit of Mortal. They are part of that old-school identity that made many people fall in love with games like this in the first place. But the spirit of the old school is not the same thing as a complete absence of reasonable balance. And if a system works in such a way that it pushes people out of the game faster than it gives them a reason to stay, then there is something wrong with that system. I myself am an old-school solo PvE player. I love Ultima Online, I love the feeling of a dangerous world, and I love the very idea that something unpleasant can happen at any moment. But even with all that love, I do not enjoy being killed for no reason by a pack of red players while I'm simply going about my business, exploring the world and doing my own thing. To me, that does not feel like an interesting gameplay moment. It does not feel like the drama of a living world. It feels like meaningless violence that I never asked for. And maybe I can tolerate it because I'm an old school player, but let us face reality. Modern players are not going to tolerate that, especially not in a game with a monthly subscription. Today, people do not want to pay money just to become free content for a bored gang of PK players. Imagine a new player. He spent a long time grinding, slowly scraping together 20 gold. For him, that was already an achievement. Finally, he bought himself a decent set of gear, and then, at that exact moment, he gets jumped by a group of overgeared players, killed and stripped. Not because he got involved in someone's war, not because he challenged anyone, not because he entered some dangerous political conflict, but simply because he was weaker and in the wrong place at the wrong time. And after that, what is he supposed to do? Just accept it? Just swaddle it as part of the game? No. To a modern player, that does not feel like honest brutality in a harsh world. It feels like punishment for the mere fact that he logged into the game. And this is exactly where Mortal Online 2 should stop proudly rejecting outside experience and instead start borrowing the best ideas from other Ultima-like games. Because good solutions already exist. They do not have to invent them from scratch. For example, in UO Outlands, there is a very important principle. When a PK kills peaceful players, he should feel not only the thrill of reward, but also the real weight of consequences. And that is exactly what Mortal Online 2 is desperately missing. I believe the game needs a penalty system for unjustified killing. Not a system that destroys the whole idea of red players, but one that introduces a proper risk versus reward principle into that playstyle. What could that look like? For example, if a PK kills a naked player or an obviously weak player who poses no threat, he receives a penalty, say 20 gold. That amount is then taken from him later upon resurrection if he dies. In other words, killing defenseless targets is no longer completely free entertainment. If a PK kills a geared player, then the penalty could be 50% of the average market value of that player's equipment set. And this is where a very important logic appears. The criminal must understand that the loot is not simply a free stolen set, but a set that he effectively bought at half price through murder. That creates a completely different feeling in the system. It is no longer consequence-free robbery. It becomes a real choice. You can attack, you can take what is not yours, but be prepared to pay for it. Not only with your weapon, not only with the risk of dying in combat, but also with your wallet.
And this becomes even more interesting in cases of group attacks, because the ugliest form of PK is not a duel, not even an ambush one-on-one, and not highway robbery in itself. The ugliest form is when several players pile onto one person, and that is exactly where the system should punish even harder. If more than one player participated in the kill, the penalty should be divided equally among all participants, and then balance starts to work in an even more elegant way. 2 against 1 means they are effectively paying the full market value of the victim's gear. 4 against 1 means they are paying 200% of the value. And at that point, the PK group starts asking itself the right question: is this attack even worth it? So the system does not forbid crime, it makes crime meaningful. It forces people to calculate. It introduces economic responsibility. And where responsibility appears, balance begins to emerge. But something else is just as important. Such a system would give the victim at least some moral satisfaction, because right now a player gets killed, stripped, humiliated, and is left with nothing but the feeling that the whole thing was completely meaningless. He was simply used as a toy for someone else's amusement.
But if he knows that the criminal will eventually pay a real price, then the emotional outcome changes. Yes, you still died. Yes, you still lost your gear. But at least evil did not walk away entirely unpunished. And from there, different variations could be built. You could make it so the penalty is only collected if the PK is killed by a bounty hunter. In that case, bounty hunting would gain real purpose, real weight, and real economic importance. The killer of peaceful players would begin to accumulate not only reputational debt, but also financial debt, and sooner or later, someone would come to collect it. Or the system could be made even harsher and simpler. It would not matter who kills the criminal, whether it is a bounty hunter, another PK, a random traveler, or even a mob. If he dies, then upon resurrection, he automatically pays the accumulated amount for all of his unjustified kills. That version is simpler, more direct, and possibly more effective. Which path is better is a matter of tuning, but the core idea, in my opinion, is completely obvious. Mortal Online 2 needs stronger consequences for unjustified killing of peaceful players. Because right now, the PK too often gets only reward and almost no real risk. And where the aggressor has no risk, the victim has no sense of justice. And where there is no sense of justice, people simply leave the game. That is exactly why I believe a system like this would not kill the spirit of Mortal Online 2. On the contrary, it would save it. It would not make the game casual. It would not turn it into a theme park. It would not remove danger from the world. It would simply make that danger more mature, more thoughtful, and more sustainable for the game itself. Because a harsh world is good, but a harsh world without boundaries very quickly becomes a stupid world, and a stupid world does not live long. If Mortal Online 2 wants to keep its players, if it wants to stop being a niche game that people leave with bitterness instead of respect, then the developers need to stop defending every form of brutality just because it is brutal. They need to start seeing the difference between meaningful danger and mindless abuse. And a penalty system for PK is exactly one of those steps that could preserve the old school spirit while making the game far more fair, deep, and sustainable in the long run.